What's good, everybody? I'm Hendrik. He's Sodek. And today we have for you our top 10 cards from Streets of New Capenna for Modern. Let's go. Alrighty. So, Streets of New Capenna, to be completely honest, is not the strongest set of all time. It's not even the strongest set of this year, probably, for Modern. And we only had one other set, so, that's not a very high bar to clear. But nonetheless, we do have some strong cards in the set. The most important ones are obviously Triumphs, because of various...
Spoiler.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, because of various implications with like fetchlands and stuff like that. Like, it won't come as a surprise to literally anyone playing Modern.
The format, yeah.
So that's pretty easy. But there are some other cards that are cool. We have some honorable mentions. We do have a top 10 list. And we'll try to go a little bit faster at the beginning because especially the back half of our list, like numbers 10 to 6 are not very interesting in our opinion.
Or at least they are interesting, but we already have this type of cards in the format, and we like in our opinions these cards are just not better than what we already have.
Exactly.
This will be much different in, for example, Pioneer, when this set will have a much bigger impact.
Yes.
But if we could talk about top 10 for constructed and top 10 for modern, these two lists would be very different from each other, just because how a few cards will strongly affect Pioneer. For modern, we don't have that many bombs or very important cards. Still, there will be a few of them that will be played here and there.
Definitely. And probably starting next set, we'll start making top 10 lists for Pioneer as well, or as Sodek said, like general constructed list. I think I'm personally leaning towards making a separate one for Modern and separate one for Pioneer, but the details of that are not important at that point. But we've already mentioned that briefly a couple of times because of the OP announcement that happened at the last day, I believe, of March. We will be playing much more Pioneer, and we will be focusing more on Pioneer. Like, Modern will still be our primary format, probably. But when it's season to play Pioneer, for example, the regional qualifier or regional championship, rather, that will be happening in November, will be in Pioneer. And if we manage to qualify for the first PT of the next season, it will be in Pioneer and limited as well. So there is definitely a lot more focus on Pioneer than it was like last 2 years. Well, because there was basically zero focus on that format. So yeah, I definitely expect us to have both Modern and Pioneer content for you in the
near future. Yeah.
In the coming months, probably starting like June, July with the Pioneer content.
Yeah, something like this. And from what I already played and experienced from Pioneer, this format is really interesting. It's obviously much different than Modern, because you don't it's a bit slower. You don't have free spells, so the tempo of play is much different. Or you can try to establish, for example, 2 free card combos and try to, and this is very likely that you will be still alive. There's a good old school control deck, with a lot of counters, a lot of removal, board wipes. I feel like Pioneer is something that Modern used to be when it got released. After the first wave of bans, you had this format that was kind of cool, and you could do a lot of different things, and Pioneer feels like you can do basically anything you want to do, at least for now, because like the format isn't broken. And we'll see in the near future how the newest sets will impact the format, and how people will try to break it, and if it can be broken. That's the
Yep, I'm much less
for me.
optimistic than Sodek about unbrokenness of Pioneer in the long term. Like a lot of people are very excited rather, that Pioneer, the format that they've played for the last couple of years, and the format that virtually got no love from WotC ever since the start of pandemic, now will once again be in the spotlight, and that more people will play their format on Modo. For example, I saw Harry tweeting that the Pioneer League went from like 250 active players to like 1,000. So like almost basically like 4 times as many people are playing Pioneer now compared to what it was like last month. And Pioneer challenges regularly have 100 or more people, so it's very cool. But basically, if you wait for a couple months till the first Pro Tour rolls out, and people who have been known for breaking formats and getting paid for breaking those formats throughout the years. Okay, sorry for this little interruption. Sodex's internet was non-functional for a second here. So yeah, back to the topic. So as I've said, I am less optimistic than Sodek about the state of Pioneer remaining as diverse as it allegedly is right now for a long time, because if people who are consistently breaking formats get their hands on Pioneer, it will quickly start to converge around like 3, 4, 5, 6, name it, like smaller group of top tier decks, and it will be much more of a we are playing Phoenix mirrors than it will be we are playing our pet decks. Still, it's a very refreshing change of pace from Modern, as Sodek said, because we don't have cards like Ragavan that have to be killed on turn 1 or you are really far behind. Or we don't have 0 mana spells. So like you don't have to interact as much on 1 mana. And it's still obviously desirable to have cards that interact with your opponent's mana dorks. But it's the format in which like 2 or 3 mana cards have a lot more room to shine than Modern, which is cool.
Even 4 mana.
Even 4 mana. Like
one of the top like, tier decks, like Winota, for example, or like Blue-White Control with a lot of like 4, even 5 mana drops is...
it's basically
really good, yeah.
It's basically like we like to dunk on Blue-White in Modern because it's a pretty cringe deck, and it's funny because in Pioneer it's basically the same deck, but the difference is that the format is on an appropriate speed and power level to it, basically. Like in Modern, I think it's really hard to justify playing the same number of like clunky cards, and you are not playing the best cards in the format. And like, for example, Supreme Verdict is something that you want in small quantities in Modern, and is one of the best cards in Pioneer. Like maybe not best, but most defining cards of the format.
Yeah.
So yeah, Blue-White's pretty good in that format. Phoenix, Winota, Lotus Field. Also a bunch of undiscovered decks at that point. It will be really cool to see how it develops. But enough about Pioneer. Once again, you will hear more on it later on from us. And we are back to our 10 top cards from Streets of New Capenna for Modern. Well, more than 10 because we will start with honorable mentions. And the first one we have is Shadow of Mortality.
Let's go.
Yeah, which is a 15 mana, 13 colorless and double black for a 7/7 that costs X less, where X is the difference between your starting life total and your current life total. And I don't believe it has in any keywords, any trample, haste, none of that, I think, right?
I don't remember about
I think
that.
it's just a 7/7 vanilla. Like, this is definitely a secondary issue with the card because there is one really annoying deck that I very much dislike in Modern that will use this card, and it's Calibrated Blast. And I know that Sodek has been somewhat interested in that deck. I know our mutual friend that lives in the same town as Sodek, Biednarcio, has been working on that deck. So Sodek, maybe you'll tell us a bit about Shadow of Mortality, but not too much.
Okay, not too much. Like Creativity deck was a fine tier 7 deck before Shadow of Mortality. After this print, I feel it will be a solid tier 4. The deck still has a lot of huge problems. For instance, you need to resolve your Calibrated Blast and flip well to win. And the deck isn't the fastest because like you can deal maximum 15 damage on turn 3, so it's not a kill versus many decks. So I don't expect this to break any formats, but it can punish a few players. For example, if the meta becomes too much of a control grindfest without that many counters. For example, 4-color control starts to be like 4-color Romnat starts to be really annoying. I feel that Calibrated Blast could be a fine deck to punish it. Shadow of Mortality does two things. It costs 15 mana. It's the second card that costs that much outside the Miracle. And the second, it can be cast on turn. There's also Out of Turn Worm, yeah, for 16. And there's like you can actually cast Shadow of Mortality. Like the deck was playing Scion of Draco. I don't know how to say it. Scion
Scion of Draco, tak.
Scion of Draco. And it was a 12 drop, but it could be cast on turn 2. I don't expect Shadow of Mortality to enter the battlefield like on turn 2, turn 3, or maybe even not on turn 4 versus many decks, but it can punish a few opponents that will try to raise Calibrated Blast and try to attack it early. So like having the text that's relevant on the card that will decrease your fail rate because like it will increase your chances to flip your 15 drop instead of another Calibrated Blast to hit for free mana for free damage for free mana is huge in my opinion. If you combine this with the addition of Kamigawa lands and maybe like a better deck building in terms of mana because I like maybe we could like rely a bit more on the combo and a bit less on Scion of Draco and shitty beats with Sokenzan, for example, or Mishra's Factory. This could be a reasonable strategy. Good for FNM, good for very strange meta games, and it's probably good enough for the one card combo that always mulligans to one card.
Yeah, I'm not convinced still. I
Still
don't.
tier 4, boy.
Yeah, like,
Tier 4.
okay. Well, moving Shadow of Mortality out of the way. Next up, we have out of the way cycle, which is the cycle of 5 spells that target one of the enemy colors. We have out of the way, which is a blue one that targets green permanents. We have knockout blow, which is I think the most impactful for modern, and it even made our top 10 list, which is the white one that targets red things. We have a green one that targets black things. We have black one that targets white things, and red one that targets blue things. So definitely the worst of them is Whack, which is the black one. It's a sorcery for 4 mana, 3 colorless, and a black. It gives -4/-4 to a creature, and it costs 3 less mana if you target a white card with it. And it's the worst one because we already have Ray of Enfeeblement, which is an instant. The whack is sorcery, and it's like that's the final nail in the coffin for the card. So yeah, whack is definitely the worst one. Once again, Ray of Enfeeblement is a 1 mana instant that gives -4/-1 to a creature, or if it's white, -4/-4 instead. So for example, in Pioneer, it kills both Elvish Mystic on 1 and Winota on 4, and whack can't kill Elvish Mystics, for example. The red one is X and a red. It costs 2 less if it targets a blue permanent, and it can be countered, and it deals X damage to a creature or planeswalker. So it's an uncounterable shock for one with scaling for red cards or for blue cards rather, which is like okay. Still want to see play in my opinion. I think the second most promising is the blue one. Out of the way, it's a 4 mana instant for 3 and a blue that costs 2 colorless less if you target a green permanent with it, and it returns a non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and you draw a card. So bouncing something with a cantrip is a somewhat strong effect. Like you used to do that a lot with like Cryptic Command, and obviously Cryptic Command is a that's like a different card, something extremely versatile in comparison to just bouncing and drawing. But it's still, I can see like blue-white players having like a copy of it in your sideboard, so you can bounce this red and 6 that came down on turn 2 and you couldn't counter it, and then you draw a card. Like it's nice to have those different like intersections of colors. Like it's nice that you have Celestial Purge that can get, for example, like historically it was something that could kill Renesis and Liliana against Jund, and you have like I guess Ethergast mainly or mostly makes this card kinda unplayable in Modern as well, because you have Ethergast basically, and
like
the scariest,
draw a card can help.
Yeah, but the scariest the scariest green thing is still basically Primeval Titan, and you'd much rather gust it or subtlety it than bounce it. So yeah, probably won't see much play. Next up, unless you have something to say about those cards.
You told everything I wanted to tell.
Yeah.
So.
Next up, we have Grizzly Sigil, which is a card that Sodek is excited about, and I think it might be okay, but mostly in Pioneer. Once again, so Grizzly Sigil is a 1 mana sorcery for black. It has Casualty 1, and we'll see this recurring trend of Casualty 1 cards being mentioned by us. So Casualty X, for those of you who aren't up to date with spoilers, is the Grixis mechanic from the set. It is, as you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power X or less, and if you do, you may copy it and choose new targets for it. So Casualty 1 means that you can sacrifice a 1-powered creature to copy this spell. And it will be, in my opinion, it will definitely work very well with things like Stitcher Supplier and cards like that. But in my opinion, the most important card is Young Pyromancer. And since Young Pyromancer is not really a modern power level card anymore, I don't think we'll see much of this stuff happening in Modern. Pioneer, on the other hand, definitely a home for Young Pyromancer to shine. And those cards will see play, in my opinion. So Sigil is the first one of those. Once again, 1 black for a sorcery, Casualty 1, and you are choosing target creature or planeswalker. And if it was already dealt damage this turn, you are dealing 3 damage to it and you are gaining 3 life. Otherwise, you are dealing 1 damage and gaining 1 life. So it's basically sorcery, black, sacrifice a creature, it deals 4 damage to a target, and you gain 4 life. That's the floor of it.
Yeah, until sometimes you want to actively sacrifice creatures, so like if you can like uh, rebuild this downside into an upside, that's a huge win and a lot of value to be made. So personally, I feel the card has a power level to shine. Not even Pioneer. Maybe it could be fine in Modern, but the problem is that there aren't any like good uh, archetypes or creatures. I can maybe see it in like red black sacrifice deck with like something similar to what Panden Wine was playing right before the Lurus ban, but at the moment I don't see it being played. Maybe in near future, maybe when there will be enough good red black sacrifice cards to work
Maybe
on them.
maybe it's a sideboard card for Yawgmoth. I don't know.
Maybe.
Like I can definitely like I think in modern I'm more interested in this killing two different X1s for 1 mana than I am in killing an X4. Like
On the other hand, it's a really good card versus Burn for Yavmot, yeah, because you can like play your Young Wolf, or like have your Young Wolf play this to kill Golbing Guide / Eidolon, gain for life in the process.
yeah, that's definitely
That's
good. But also like
that's a
you are playing against Hammer, you play Young Wolf on turn one, and you then on turn two you can kill like Esper Sentinel and Mem Knight or something like that. It's also pretty cool.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, definitely an interesting card that we will keep our eye on. Great with any sacrifice fodder, as we already mentioned. Next up, the card that Sodek chose, it's an offer you can't refuse, which is I've heard the term inverted spell pierce, which
Yeah.
is somewhat accurate. It's a 1 mana blue instant that counters a non-creature spell, and its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. So
Okay, why it's on the list? That's kind of interesting. Uh, by itself, the card isn't the most powerful because like nowadays with Ragavan around and like other cheap counter magic, generally speaking, you want to like giving opponent mana is especially post side as bad as it can be because they will most likely have even more counters, so it's hard to fight on this uh, on this uh, on this level. But there's a trick. You can counter your own spell, so you can create treasures. So if you play a 0 mana spell and counter it with an offer you can't refuse, then you are up on mana from two cards. So I saw Belcher players on Bertel Discord were trying to adapt this into Recross piles. So you could, instead of playing Infernal Plunge and Pact of the Titan, which are just dead when you are drawing them, have some have cards that will still create a mana from one land you have, and it will let you create 2 mana. Then you can play Ritual Ironcrag Feet Belcher, while not being extremely terrible when you draw them, because an offer you can't refuse from time to time will do the job versus, for example, Cascade spell when they
yeah,
have just one Force of Negation or something. There's also another question: what type of 0 mana spell you want to play? So far, Noxious Revival was the one that could be played because it's good with Paramancer Ascension piles. It can like do really cool tricks like putting your Belcher back at the top, messing with opponent's top deck, protecting your top deck from Ragavan attack, etc., etc. But the big downside of that is that the combo will cost you 5 life, which is a lot in some matchups. So personally, I'm not the biggest fan of this engine instead of Plunge Titan, but it's at least good enough to be tested in the competitive environment. And I want to say that Belcher Discord is extremely good at finding this type of
well,
tiny interactions, and I want to say that.
Can't you
Good
just
draw.
play an offer you can't refuse instead of plunge, and you still play pact? You can just counter pact.
Yeah, but what you can counterpact, true, but if you have a 0 mana spell that you can that's only here to be countered, you can, for example, play Mishra's Bubble. So
That's true.
so that's probably a better 0 mana spell to draw naturally.
Yeah, it was basically that you've been concerned with losing 5 life, and you don't need to lose 5 life if
Mishra's
you have
Bubble
pact.
maybe a solution, because you, instead of having a dead draw, it's just a redraw for the next turn. So maybe it can be really
Maybe
good.
welding charge to
But
protect your belcher.
what? OMG, that's actually good. Didn't think about it. Yeah, that can be actually relevant.
Also, if you have Veil of Summer, can you Veil and then target your own stuff with an offer you can't refuse? And it's not countered because you have Veil.
That's true also. Very
Okay.
big brain.
Next up, we have a broad category of cards that are kind of like, maybe not broad, and they are more of a dishonorable mention than honorable mention. Those are cards that didn't make our list, and those are all blue charms, basically. And to maybe make it a bit more broad, in the general, like blue instants that cost like 3 mana or more than that. Like, there is such a stiff competition for those cards in Modern right now that it really takes a lot for them to be playable. Like, they really need to be good to make you think, maybe I will play this card instead of Archmage's Charm. Like, Archmage's Charm is a really, really good card. And even Memory Deluge also kind of makes this like even more stiffer for new cards to like break through it. I think the closest one that we had is the new Esper Charm, the Obscura Charm, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
It's Esper mana for an instant, and it has 3 modes as every charm. You can choose one, and those ones are return target multicolored permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Then you have destroy target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 3 or less. And the last one is counter target instant or sorcery spell, I believe. And this card would be playable if the first mode was divination instead, in my opinion. Like, my problem with this charm is that it does nothing on an empty board, and it's a very, very sucky quality for a charm to have. Like, charms are overpriced cards because they are versatile. And if your versatile card can't do anything on an empty board, then it loses a lot of its appeal.
So, then it's not that versatile, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. So if the first mode of Obscura Charm was divination, frankly, if any mode of Obscura Charm was divination, but I think the first one is the first mode is obviously cute and, I can repeat my Teferi, la 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 la, whatever. But like, I think if the first mode was divination, then you actually have counter spell against other counters and cascade. You have a kill spell against creatures, and you have a divination. Like, this sounds to me like a very potent set of modes, and I would be interested in playing that card if it looked like that. And other charms are just not very good. I think the Grixis one is the second only because the banned one is like terrible. Like, it's
like, it can be really good in very specific decks when you like are very likely to have a big creature, but outside that, kinda shitty.
Our friend.
So this is a modern list, so like keep that in mind, because I think that these charms can be much better in Pioneer. In this
And standard and other like smaller formats, definitely. But yeah, our mutual friend Michał, who likes band a lot, messaged me recently. What do I think about a band charm in comparison to Archmage charm? And I told him that if band charm was 2 mana, I still would have liked to play Archmage charm over it. So yeah, that's
Flip.
Yeah, and then there we have last honorable mention on our list, which is Rocco Cabaretti Caterer. It's a card I chose. It's legendary creature. I think it's 2/1. It costs
3/1 even,
X.
I guess.
It costs X and Naya mana, and when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card with CMC X or less and put it into play. So, like in my opinion, it's in general important to always keep tutors in mind, because tutors are like cards that scale quite well, and they are usually like when you have a combo that requires a specific card, it's much more likely for you to get a decent tutor than it is to gain more functional copies of the same card. So
True.
And like the floor of this card is basically you are playing free. Is it 3/1 or 2/1?
3/1.
3/1. So basically you are paying free mana for a 3/1 and Dryad Arbor, which is like the
floor. The floor.
The floor of the card, and it's not the most like interesting floor in 2022, but it scales okay. We've already mentioned, or we didn't last week. Oh, I don't think we did. But there are like possibilities that Devoted Druid will be good again, that we will talk about later. And having tutor on a creature, this one costs Naya, so it probably won't see play.
It's a stinker. Why, in my opinion, it's a stinker? Because we have Chord of Calling already. And Chord of Calling has Convoke. This doesn't. This can't be played as an instant. So I just don't feel that this card will be played anywhere. Again, maybe in Pioneer, maybe this type of decks, but in Modern we already have two much better tutors called Chord of Calling and Eldritch Evolution, and I just don't see it being good.
But yeah, I do think that it's even less likely for this card to be good in Pioneer because you don't have Dryad Arbor. Because I think that's I think this floor of having a ramp spell in this card is very important for free mana.
Like, I feel that maybe one day we'll get to the point when like having a creature that will tutor you for the combo piece and will be a win con with infinite mana, for example, can be something.
Yes, that's why I like this card, because like it's a split card of once again, it can ramp, it can tutor your win condition or your combo, and it can be a win condition in itself. So it's overpriced definitely, but it in a right deck it can be a very versatile tool. Okay, moving on. After a brisk half an hour on our honorable mentions, we are starting with number 10 on our list, which is Rob the Archives. It's a sorcery for 2 mana, 1 and a red. It has casualty 1, and its text is exile top 2 cards of your library. Until end of turn, you can play them. It's important to highlight that it says until your next end step instead of until your next turn or the end of your next turn. So it only works on the turn you played it instead of like this turn and the next turn, like Light Up the Stage or Reckless Impulse does. And because of that, the card is significantly worse. But it also can look at top 4 cards of your deck if you have a 1/1 lying around. So it has much lower floor, but it has arguably higher ceiling, especially later on in the game. When you have already a bunch of mana lying around and casting all those spells on the same turn is not very, it doesn't put as much constraints on you. So basically, when I think about this card, I think less of a build around like light up the stage, reckless impulse type of card, and more of I'm playing like a mid-range red deck that Hayashi likes to play, and I have young or seasoned pyromancer in my deck. At some point, I will have six lands in play because I am a mid-range deck, and I will have a 1/1 token lying around, and I don't know. I have 2 copies of this card in my deck, and it will draw me 4 cards.
That's a reasonable take.
So yeah.
Or maybe this will be a ninth.
Yeah.
Ninth light up the stage effect in prowess, maybe. Like these slower prowess decks. But I'm not a believer of this card. I don't feel it's really good.
I think you either have to be slower or you have to be really, really cheap. Like, you either have
your curve needs to end on 2 mana.
Yeah, you either want your spell it to cast it on turn 6, get 4 things, and play them all, or you want it to cast it on turn 4 and turn over 2 0-drops. Like your deck is like Mutagenic, Groves, Mishra's Bubbles, Gut Shots, and you are mostly interested in like triggering prowess and I don't know. You're playing Niv Magus or whatever, and your deck is absolutely terrible. Okay, moving on, because we wanted to speedrun this part, to Knockout Blow. It's the card we already kind of mentioned. It's from the Hate card cycle. It's the white one. It's an instant that costs 3 mana, 2 and a white, and it costs 2 less if you target a red permanent with it. And it deals 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature, and you gain 2 life. So, it's a 1 mana card that deals with Ragavan and Darcy and gives you life, which is cool. It's also a card that's good against Burn. So, I think it's a nice... Like, it covers enough space, in my opinion, to be like justifiable in sideboards from time to time. I don't think it will be like any sort of like mainstay in the format or anything like that, and you will see it like on a Mystical Dispute level or something. It will be much more of a, if I see this card in the sideboard, I'm like, okay, so this person wanted it against Burn, and they want it against Ragavan as well, and Darcy. That makes sense to me. So I can see playing like a copy or 2 in the sideboard of this card. And that's about it.
And I totally agree with that. Like, this is like a very, maybe not very narrow, but like the card that has a very, like strictly tells you what it does and what it kills, and if you expect a lot of targets, just play them.
Yeah, it doesn't do much or many different things, but it does the thing it does well. And basically, if there are multiple archetypes you want this card against, so like Ragavan Dex and Burn, for example, then by all means play it in your sideboard. Especially if your Burn matchup is dicey, I think. Because it's a really good card against Burn, and it's like whatever against Ragavan. Like, you don't really care that much about 2 life against Ragavan Dex, and you do against Burn. Okay. Moving on to number 8, we have Endless Detour, which is a banned instant. It costs banned mana, and it takes this. By the way, I don't have those cards in front of me, so I have to read those texts from the memory. But so far, I've done a pretty decent job, and I think I will continue to do so. So this one says, the owner of target spell, non-land permanent, or card in a graveyard puts it on top or bottom of their library.
Okay. Or a graveyard puts the top on, but yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't expect you to like every card from your memory. That's, you know.
I have a pretty good memory, so yeah. But yeah, so it's basically like we know this templating from Ethergast. So it's like an Ethergast that works on any color and also on cards in graveyard, but it costs 3 mana and has very strict.
and harder mana costs.
Very strict requirements because it's just banned card.
I feel like this effect is wide enough to maybe see play as a one copy, because if you are playing this, for example, in 4-color, because that's the probably only deck that maybe wants to play it, I can see playing it just because it can be okay versus many different decks. It's never something extremely powerful, but something that if you top deck you will be quite happy to have with other powerful cards. If you have, for example, Omnat, like the Fairy Ren and etc., like having this white answer, even if it's not for good, it's only for even a turn, it can be good enough. So I can see it being played. Mm, but this is not my play style at all, like this 3 mana reactive spell thing, but I can see it being annoying versus me.
I think a lot of people will get excited about casting it from Noble Hierarch, and then
Don't do this.
they will be fairly disappointed with the results. I think that with banned Triumph getting printed, there is a chance that like banned Reclamation Art, for example, is pretty okay. I don't think it will be,
Maybe.
but there is a chance. And this is the type of card that I think is pretty good in Reclamation decks because you just want versatile cards that buys you time. And also there is one other deck that already plays a banned costed card in Wargate. Maybe it's a Tameshi card. Who knows?
What?
Like it's a pretty versatile answer to things, right? You just
I feel
anything.
I feel that Tameshi has so high KRF that it can't just play this type of very expensive cards. So I'm not the
Probably
biggest
no,
fan.
but
Like I'm also not a fan of Tameshi deck, like at all. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's something. There's something in this deck, and it can be at least okay. And like I have very similar feelings about Endless Detour. Then like my feelings about Tameshi combo in modern and Endless Detour in modern are quite similar. So maybe okay, but nothing spectacular.
all right. So number 7 on our list is the last card that we have with Casualty 1. Not the last card with Casualty on our list. A little spoiler here. And the card is a Little Chat, which is an instant, I believe, for 2 mana, 1 and a blue. It has Casualty 1, and it's a sleight of hand. So look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put one of them into your hand and the other one to the bottom of your library. Once again, it's a card that works well with Young Pyromancer. It's a card that works well with... that's about it, I guess.
At least it's an instant, so
it's an instant. So yeah, like
it's a better side of hand, yeah.
Yeah, we just don't really have many expendable creatures in blue decks in modern. Like we don't have a like blue black sacrifice deck like with with like Witch's Oven and Cauldron Familiar or with Stitcher Supplier or stuff like that. So we can't really reliably make this into a 2-for-1.
Yeah. That's why I'm not the biggest fan. Like we probably have to just wait for more cheap threads that will work nicely with sacrifice. Like Stitcher Suppliers 5 to 8 would be nice because then you can at least pretend that you have a plan. But again, I'm not like I don't see it being played. Maybe in Pioneer with Young Pyromancer.
Oh, yeah,
It could
it will
be
be
something.
good in Pioneer, I think. But yeah, once again, number 10 to 6 on our list won't be like we don't expect those cards to see much play. So last of those cards, number 6, is also the last card with Casualty on our list, and it's
What?
Obnixilis, and you have to help me here because I don't remember his official title.
Obnixilis is the adversary.
The adversary. It's a 3 mana, 1 red black for a legendary planeswalker Obnixilis or Objust, I think, or Nixilis just.
Nixilis.
Just Nixilis, okay. It has starting loyalty of 3, and it has casualty X. And so as you cast the spell, you can sacrifice a creature with power X, and then you have another. You copy Obnixilis, and you have another Obnixilis in play. And the second Obnixilis is non-legendary, and its starting loyalty is equals to X. So, for example, if you sacrifice a 2-power creature like, I don't know, Ragavan, you get a loyalty to Obnixilis. And it has 3 abilities. It has +1, which says either target or each. It doesn't matter in Modern. Each opponent, yeah.
It matters a lot.
Yeah, okay, like
because of
okay,
Veil.
yeah, of Veil. Each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card, and if you control a demon or a devil, I believe you gain 2 life. It has -2 or -1, -2.
-2.
Create a 1/1 red devil token with whenever this creature dies, deal 1 damage to any target, and it has a -5. I want to say
-7.
-7, and I have no idea what this ability does.
Target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life. So basically, this card is designed to like deal you damage like when you don't expect it to be dealt, like from these strange triggers, strange 1/1s that will trigger after they die, etc. So
a lot of chip damage for sure.
Yeah, chip damage. And this -7 ability, like ultimate, will as often target opponent as you, because like if they are at 7 life or lower, they will be dead from this draw effect.
But they will draw for 7 cards.
That's true, that's a lot.
You want your opponent to draw 7 cards?
Sometimes. Overall, I think that the card will have a really big impact again on Pioneer, not in Modern. I would really like to see it being played in Modern. And again, I'm a Mayhem Devil lover in Modern. I would really like it to be a playable card. And Obnixilis is in a similar position. It's a 3 mana card that's not extremely good on its own, but it can be a really good support card for some strategies. So if we get another, cheap cards to support red black sacrifice, like in form of creatures, because you need to casualty them to have something to sacrifice, then maybe this strategy could be better, and this card would shine. Right now, I don't see it that much, but I would love to be wrong here, and I would love to see this card in Modern.
Okay, so I would mostly agree with Sadek. I think this card will be Basto in Standard. Absolutely ridiculous. And I was kind of looking at those cards through all cards in New Capenna through lens of Standard, because I got qualified to the Capenna Championship, so I will have to play Standard in a month or so. And this card looks bonkers. It even gets copied with Esika's Chariot, which is like... you know, and you got a Jaunt Triumph now, so you can play like red, green, splash this, whatever. I haven't played. Also, I haven't played a single match of Standard yet, so it's not like all my insights or any of those will be valuable, at least for now. But yeah, probably okay in Pioneer. Biggest problem with it in Pioneer, I think, is that a lot of the time your untapped green source for your turn 1 elf in your 3-color deck is a pathway, and you can't cast it off of pathway on 1.
I just don't feel that you need to rush this Obnixilis. I feel that it will be a good, like, again, a really good card for red-black sacrifice decks, because you can play Stitchers to play, you can play maybe a Pyromancer and go this route, you can go and play Problem familiar, this type of effects.
Well, yeah, but I also think that Pioneer is right on the verge of being powerful enough that this Obnixilis will suck. Like, the first ability is not very good.
I think it will be really good if you have two of them and you like keep plussing and opponent can't get rid of them early, because at some point you can't just ignore it and keep losing life.
So basically, it's a 3 mana. If you sacrifice a creature, it's a 3 mana, 4 power haste creature that you need 2 removal spells for, more or less. And I don't think that it's something that, for example, will be problematic for like Lotus. Or for... Especially if you want to play it on turn 2 and you want to have 2 of them, you need to sacrifice your 1-drop. So it will stymie your development.
Again, I don't feel that you will ever sacrifice one drop for it. It's more like a black-red deck with Omnicult Anvil. I also like click the red-black deck. There's a Voldar and Epicure already, like played as a 4-off. So
yeah, like
it just really likes to be sacrificed, yeah.
that's
Just
true.
To convert this card into -2 life, yeah.
Yep. I don't know. I just think that there are almost enough decks in Pioneer with like combo / over the top finish that it won't care about getting domed for 4 every turn for like 1 or 2 turns. Like
Maybe.
I don't know. I don't think that Winota will be a deck that like is concerned with this. I don't think Lotus Field will be concerned with this. I do think that it's a great card against Blue White, for example, because like they are playing Verdict, and they are also playing Farewell, I believe. And I don't think that Farewell deals with Planeswalkers, because it's like it has 4 modes. It has artifacts, enchantments, creatures, and graveyards. So yeah, it can't kill Planeswalkers. So like obviously, if the card was worded differently and it pluses to discard, and if you can't discard, you lose 2, it would be incredibly busted in every format, and it will be like it would just be
rush it. You would rush it on turn 2.
Then you would
just
rush
to
it.
Keep this card.
This card would be, even if it says each player, even if you were also discarding, I think this card would still be insane. But in this current form, like this is my biggest problem with Modern and Obnixilis, that there are so many decks that couldn't care less about just losing 4 life per turn from it. Like Amulet doesn't matter. Living End doesn't matter.
I will
Hammer,
even, if I'm playing Living End, I will happily discard a card quite often, because I will like have more power.
Oh yeah,
after the
even that, I guess. Yeah, Hammer doesn't matter. Even 4 color, which is like a deck that it could matter from time to time. They will just play Omnath, play land, and gain 4, and like
doesn't matter again.
Once again, Murktide, most of the time it won't matter as well. Like once again, the only deck that is somewhat popular that it will be problematic for is this fucking Blue White. So like
maybe Rhinos too. If you can deal with the first wave of Rhinos, then I can see it being problematic.
But also like which deck want to play this card, and would you really play it over like Hidetsugu Consumes All even, which is another like
no
red-black 3 mana card. So yeah, just not something that is suited for Modern in our opinion, and it goes to show that this set is not very deep for Modern, but once again, as Sodek said, a lot of great like Pioneer cards or Standard cards. Okay, let's jump to our top 5, which are cards that we actually believe will see at least some amount of play, some of them substantial amount of play, such as Triumphs. And we'll start with number 5, Riveteer's Charm, also known as Jant Charm 2.0. Once again, it's a charm, costs giant mana. Choose one of the 3 modes you have. And those modes are definitely exile each opponent's graveyard.
Target player's graveyard.
Target player graveyard. It definitely has the draw mode, and it's exile top 3 cards of your library until your next end step. You can play those cards.
Nice.
And it has the last mode that are either target player or each opponent.
Target opponent.
Target opponent sacrifice a creature or planeswalker with the highest mana value among their creature or planeswalker, something similar to that.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
So
overall, this card will like the most impactful mode will be exile top 3, and you can cast them. Like we already saw how powerful expressive iteration can be for 2 mana. This won't be expressive iteration, but at least this is a charm that looks powerful. In like extreme late game, it should give you 3 cards out of 1 card, which is really good. All other modes are reasonable. Like this sacrifice a creature is 3 mana removal against the highest mana value. So at least opponents won't sacrifice a mana dork or something. That something being sacrificed will be impactful. And for obvious reasons, exiling graveyards is annoying and shouldn't be legal in the modern format. So sadly, it happened to this card. Overall, I feel that this is one of the very few cards that will be a reason to play Jant over anything like Ragavan related without blue, because I still think that Merktide will be just better than Jant, but maybe with this charm, Jant players will finally stop playing Erza Saga in their decks and focus more on created just card advantage and try to fight on the fair level, not being a bad Erza Saga deck.
So we have really different takes on this card.
What?
When you started with the most important mode will be exile, I was like, yeah, of course, exile target player's graveyard will be the most important mode, and then you followed with the library stuff. So basically, what I think this card will be in a meta games with low density of graveyard stuff. Yeah, like you still will have graveyard decks from time to time, but in some meta games, you don't want to dedicate your sideboard slots like Leyline of the Void or whatever. You will play this card, and it also has other modes. Like it's a pretty good card against Merktide specifically because it kills their Merktide. It draws you cards against Merktide. And I guess it stops the next Merktide from happening. It also turns off Delirium. But I don't think it's a main... I don't think this card is nearly as powerful as even Archmage's Charm, let alone... let alone the Express Iteration. So, because, you need to play all those cards... of course, the ideal scenario is you play it in your opponent's end step, and you either make them sacrifice something large or you exile, you untap, and you have all your mana to cast those cards. But casting 3 cards, you can play lands off of it, right? Yeah, so even if you hit a land, I just think 3 cards in one turn is... and if you hit another copy of this above the first one, it's so awkward. Because you have to pay 3 mana and what? You didn't want to make them sacrifice beforehand, so it's not exciting to make them sacrifice now. Because if it was, you would choose this mode over drawing, usually. And then you are paying 3 mana among, aside from other mana commitments that you have from the first charm, to exile cards again, and you have to play them this turn, not till your next turn, with... light up the stage. And the difference is that you already spent at least 3 and probably 4 or 5 mana, so you likely have 1 mana and you already made your land drop. So Uh, I'm not a fan of this card. Like, you know, maybe I do think this card is cool. I don't think it's powerful enough to make you want to play Jund. I don't think it will be powerful enough to warrant multiple inclusions in the main deck. I think it's more of a versatile card that's like something you want to play in your 75 to cover graveyard in low graveyard metagames.
Metagames, yeah.
That also is a very high value over replacement card. Like I like having this type of card in my deck. Like I like having this type of card in my sideboard. I love like when I played Grixis, I really liked Counterspell in my sideboard because if I have a card that's kind of sucky in the matchup, I can just put Counterspell in it and it will always be like okayish at least. Or in most cases, it will be okayish at least. So for example, you have this card and you are playing against a deck that has, I don't know, you are playing Jund and you have Fatal Push and your opponent is playing a deck that's like, I don't know. We are playing 4-color, which is not a great deck to have Fatal Push against. And you board it in because it can draw you cards. It can kill the Teferi, can kill the Ren. So yeah, like I think it's a pretty versatile card, but it will mostly be played because of the graveyard mode and not because of the card advantage mode. But once again, that's my take. Might be wrong on that.
I will see. Like I feel that like if you want to fully support this mode from like exiling free cards, the deck had to be rebuilt. Like this should be a top end, not Liliana of the Veil, but this card. And maybe this can look a bit better. Like, but still, you like if you want to play this card, you also want to play Jund. So maybe this is the first mistake you made, wanting to play Jund. So instead of like thinking why Jund could be better, maybe it's better to think why I'm not playing Meriktide, for example, or something like this. So
yeah, like I really think that this card kind of works well with mana dorks because you get more mana.
yeah,
So maybe you want to play like Jund Yawgmoth. I don't know.
Or like Ignoble Hierarch, and then like try to with Ragavan, then you have more mana. Your mana is better because you don't play Erza's Saga.
Yeah,
Maybe
I don't
there's
know.
something here, but
It might
I'm
also
not
be.
interested in playing Fairy.
Yeah,
So.
it might also be a card that you just splash in red green.
Oh, that's better in my opinion.
And it's an answer for
red
Meriktide in red green, which is kind of tough to have otherwise. I don't know.
But maybe that's a way.
We'll see.
Okay, moving on.
Next up, number 4 on our list is Titan of Industry. Oh boy. Okay. It's definitely a 7/7. And I think it costs 7 or 6 mana.
7 mana.
7 mana. 5 green or 4 green.
4 green.
Yeah. It has reach and trample.
Yes.
And when it enters the battlefield, you choose 2 out of 4?
Yes.
Okay. You definitely have destroy target enchantment.
Or artifact.
Or it's the same mode, right?
Yes.
Oh, there is an uncommon one for 6 mana that has different modes for artifact and enchantment. Okay. So, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Create a token. That's a 4/4 Rhino, I believe.
Rhino Warrior.
Rhino Warrior, okay.
Extremely important.
You gain 5 life.
Yes.
And the last one is probably you are searching for something in your deck.
No. It's not primal command. It's a card from New Capenna. Capenna, whatever. Put a shield counter on a creature you control.
Okay.
That's, in my opinion, really cool because if this is like where it can be played. There's only one deck in Modern that can play this card. It's Amulet. That's kind of obvious in my opinion. And like when you want to play this expensive green card, there's always a question. Is this card better than Primeval Titan? Is there any moment when you want to play this card over Primeval Titan or search for it with Summoner's Pact? And we had this similar discussion with Cultivator Colossus, because like there was also 7 mana, a really good ability, but Primeval Titan works better with the deck, etc., etc. And it turned out that like having 2 copies of the Colossus is really good, because you are actually drawing cards, putting a lot of lands, etc., etc. This card also has some upsides that can like be an answer in situations when Primeval Titan is not good enough. For instance, when you are scared of Supreme Verdict, this shield counter can help. I guess it gives you Indestructible, yeah?
Shield is whether it's next time it basically regenerate.
Okay, so it works. Or you want to destroy Ensnaring Breach. That's, some corner cases, but I feel that the card can be good enough to see a play as a one of
It's like
Amulet 75.
I think so. It's basically like you already had you already wanted to have a too terrible pactable answer for like enchantments. And this one, instead of being like a reclamation sage that's a 2-1, brings 11 power with it if you choose this enchant and make a Rhino. So
Yeah, Rhino Warrior.
Rhino Warrior. Yeah. So definitely an interesting card, and I've already saw some Amulet players on Twitter saying that it will be okay and probably will be at least will be tested and is likely to stay in the deck. Okay. We have our top 3
Pam pam pam.
before us. And we want, at least we will do better than we did in Kamigawa, because we had the Lion Sash on place number 1, and we won't have the same. We won't make the same mistake this time. Okay, so number.
Speaking of mistakes, let's go.
Speaking of equipments that are too high on the list, we have Luxior or Laxior, and the second one is, I really want to say Yadas, because the name is Giada, and I want to say Yadas because for those of you who follow basketball, there's a very famous basketball player these days, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and he's Greek, and or at least he has Greek descent, because it's a Greek name, and you are spelling it with G at the beginning, and it's not Giannis, it's Giannis, so I want to say Yadas as well, but it's probably Giadas gift. Let's stay with Yada. We are Europeans. We'll stick with Yada.
I will keep telling it's Luxior.
Yeah, it's Luxior Yada's gift, and it's an equipment, legendary artifact equipment. Cost 1 mana, which will be very important later on. It has a 1 triggered and 1 static ability, and then 2 activated abilities. So 4 abilities for only 1 mana. So first one is, whenever a counter is put on equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's a static, yeah?
It's a static. So 2 statics and 2 activated. The second static is as long as an enchantment, as long as equipped permanent is a...
Not as long. Equipped permanent isn't a planeswalker.
Yes.
And it's a creature in addition to its other types. So you can equip planeswalker with it.
Yeah,
because,
and so there is another static ability, right?
Yes.
So we have as long then, right? As long as equipped creature gets +X, where X is the number of loyalty counters on it.
Okay, you are you got defeated. Like, please stop.
Okay.
I will maybe okay. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it. First. Second, equipped permanent isn't a planeswalker. It's a creature in addition to its other types. That's it. And then you have equips. Equip planeswalker for 1 mana.
Yes.
And
okay.
equip
So yeah,
for 3 mana.
I forgot that first ability already covers the loyalty on Planeswalker stuff. Yeah, that's true. That's embarrassing. Sorry for that. But yeah,
Yeah, like
so
you did a really good job earlier on, so happens.
I also did a good job on the part that will actually be relevant, which is the first ability. Because this card, if it sees play in Modern, will be paired with Devoted Druid. So
Yes.
if you've been around Modern for like 4 years at this point, probably, you probably remember when Devoted Druid was a tier like 2-ish, probably. Like it was a competitive deck. Something that you had to respect when going to a Modern tournament. And the combo basically works that way. Devoted Druid is a 2-mana Elf Druid from Shadowmoor. It costs 1 and a green. It has a tap for green ability. It's 0-2, and it has a pretty unique ability of put a -1/-1 counter on it, untap Devoted Druid. So the cost is putting counter, and the text of the ability is to untap it. So back in the day, it was paired with it was basically paired with something ever since it got printed, because it got printed in Shadowmoor, and then in Eventide we had Quill Spike, and Quill Spike had
That was so cool.
it's 4 mana, 3 and a hybrid black green for a 1/1 that had a hybrid
I
black
think it's a free mana. I think it's
Is it 3 mana? Okay. It's either 3 or 4. I think it's 4.
3 mana.
Okay.
Convert mana cost 3.
So yeah, 2 and a hybrid black green for a 1/1 that has a activated ability that hybrid black green. And I don't remember if removing a counter is a part of the cost or not.
Yeah, that was a cost.
Yeah.
And
Remove a
cost.
-1/-1 counter from a creature you control, and Quill Spike gets +3/+3 until end of turn. So
we had an infinite
the original combo was to tap for mana, untap, remove a counter, and you have arbitrarily large Quill Spike that will kill your opponent. Then the modern version was paired with Vizier of Remedies, which is a card from Amonkhet, and that's when the deck first got in the spotlight. I think Amonkhet was spring of 2016, I want to say.
I will believe you. It was a 2 mana, 2/1.
It's a 2 mana human cleric, I believe, or also druid. It doesn't matter. It's a human, definitely. It's 1 and a white for a 2/1 that has an ability exact wording might elude me, but to the tune of whenever a -1/-1 counter, whenever any number of -1/-1 counters is put on your creature, instead put the same amount -1. So you are putting one less -1/-1 counters on your creatures. So
with the druid, you could put a counter that would one less from this. So for the cost of putting 0 -1/-1 counter, you could untap the druid, so you could create infinite mana and win with Walking Ballista, big final of devastation, whatever.
Yes. And now you have Luxior or Laxior. I like Luxior.
Luxior is nice.
We'll stick with Luxior for now. We're Polish. We can also say Luxior because it sounds like Luxia.
Yeah, very famous.
Very famous Polish person named Klocuch is a fan of a word Luxia. So yeah. What's the benefit of playing this instead of Vizier? And I guess we should start with why Devoted Druid hasn't been a good deck for years at this point.
Okay, maybe we should start with why this works. Back in the day, -1/-1 counters and +1/+1 counters were put on both creatures, and it they were.
It doesn't work that way, so because
now
Luxior,
they negate each other. Yeah,
but Luxior doesn't put counters on your creature. It's just gets +X. So
okay,
it doesn't matter. It's basically you are putting for each counter you put, your creature gets +1/+1. So it will always be an 0-2 basically.
Yes,
and it just taps and untaps and gives you
Infinite mana.
infinite or arbitrarily large amount of mana. So, why this deck hasn't been played recently? Well, there are many reasons, but the thing that definitely did not help it is that you had to, you still have to untap with Devoted Druid. That's
The biggest problem. Eh?
the biggest problem. Then you had to also be in white to play the Vizier of Remedies. And you had to have two creatures that both cost 2 mana, are fragile to removal. Devoted or Vizier of Remedies is even an X1 against Lava Dart and Ren. If you sometimes you will have to play it first, and then you play like Tutor for Druid, and then it's pretty sad if your Vizier got killed. And it's also like it costs a bunch of mana. It's pretty clunky. So what Luxor gives you? First of all, you don't need to play any color other than green, like from the base. You can play mono green if you want, which is really cool. Will you want to play mono green? Probably not, but you can. And you can just splice it into any color combination, including green, which is cool. Second of all, it's an equipment that costs 1 mana, which means it's also an artifact that costs 1 mana. And also it's an artifact, so it's tutorable with 3 different cards. Stoneforge Mystic, Urza's Saga, and Karn the Great Creator. 3 important cards that are at least okayish cards on their own, with Stoneforge Mystic being the worst one, of course. That can tutor both it and the infinite mana payoff called Viridian Longbow, which is a 1 mana equipment from Mirrodin. It has equip, I believe, 3. Doesn't matter because you have infinite mana. And it has equipped creature has tap it to ping any target for 1. So when you're done with producing mana, you can equip it, your Devoted Druid with it, and then you start just untapping to ping instead of to produce mana. You can also kill your opponent with Walking Ballista as well. Or just a very big finale of Devastation that will get your creatures +X, where X is like something exorbitant, and it gives haste, so you have at least 2 and probably more than 2 attackers that are lethal, which is cool. So also, I guess the last upside of Luxor is that it's not a creature, so it's 1 less creature that can die before you combo off. So you start with Luxor and then you play Druid. You just have to protect Druid. And
or,
you can,
for example, the card like Postmortem Launch.
Yes, exactly.
Like the Pyrexan black card that can return a creature from the graveyard with convert mana cost X, and it gives you haste. So that means that if you have Luxor on the battlefield, you can always threaten the kill with Devoted Druid, so you're gonna create some form of negative tempo swings, etc., etc. So personally, I strongly believe that the green-white version, like from the thing that we knew from like 2017, 2016, still won't be a thing. That wasn't a problem to find the combo pieces. But the biggest problem for the deck was to untap with Devoted Druid. And this won't change. But what changes now is that more cards will be both a win con and a combo piece at the same time. So as a saga will give you an option to have to find the Luxor, to find Longbow, or just to create tokens to attack the opponent from another direction. So as Karn works really nicely with mana dorks because you have more mana, so you can, for example, turn 3 play Karn plus liquid metal coating to attack opponent's mana too. So maybe there will be a mono green, maybe red green, maybe black green, who knows? Karn deck that will nicely use Devoted Druid because don't forget that Devoted Druid by itself can tap for 2 mana because you can grab 1 mana from natural tap, then put one counter to make it -1 attack, one toughness, and add one again. So that means that you can play Karn on turn 3 even without the third land drop, which is, in my opinion, huge. And then maybe you can, start creating some value and try to go from there. Overall, I don't feel that it will be good enough, but it's nice to have this type of extra combo piece that maybe one day will work. And while you are like listening to it, okay, New Capenna will not be on MTG until next week, yeah. So
Yeah, I think they actually went back to paper pre-releases being the very first opportunity to play with new cards,
and that's
which I
really
think
cool.
is really cool, and it should be like that. So you have paper pre-releases this weekend, which is 22nd to 24th, and then it releases digitally on
28th.
Thursday, so it's 28th, I believe. Both on Modo and Arena, and then you have Arena and Modo pre-release events on the next weekend. Yeah. Also, as Sodek said about still regarding Devoted Druid, I do think that the most vital combination will be, in fact, Devoted Druid with Karn. Like, this will be what you want because Karn is both a win con and a tutor for a combo piece.
And Karn is really good versus a few
It's a hate card
like
also, like
top
incidental
yeah,
hate card. Yeah,
one of the really good top deck like hate card for top decks in the format. For instance, you can, if you're on a play, you can turn free Karn into Chalice for 0 versus Cascade decks, which is like something you will force them to act. Also, Devoted Druid works nicely versus Living End because Devoted Druid can kill itself in
on
response
demand
to
at any time.
yeah, yeah, because you can just put enough counters
Yeah,
to
and
have
if
it
you
in the
generate,
graveyard.
also if you generate enough mana, and well, Devoted Druid decks, if they are good at doing something, it's generating a lot of mana.
True.
Even if your opponent already cascaded, you can Karn for Ensnaring Bridge also. So that's cool. Uh, so yeah, as Sodek said, I think two most promising homes for the Devoted Druid combo are Red Green Saga that we've already saw a bit, and then you have good cards. You basically have Druid, you have Karn of course, and you are playing like Rensky, Ragavan.
More
I even
mana torch,
saw
maybe?
Arilax having a version with like Elvish Reclaimer, and then you can have another payoff for infinite mana because you can have Kesik Ulvran that is tutorable with Reclaimer, and because his version was red green, it had Delirium for Channeler, and I don't even remember if he played Channeler, but he played Unholy Heat, and he played Traverse, which is if you get Delirium, you have another tutor that costs 1 mana, and it can tutor both for your combo piece in Druid, and it can tutor for Wolfran if you need to win the game this way.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable actually.
So
Like,
that's pretty cool. And the second one, also, I guess I already mentioned it because Arilax actually had an article on that on TCG. And it was basically the same things that I read it like uh, late last week, and we already mentioned last week in our Polish podcast, like about we already mentioned Luxor, and I was pretty high on the red green shell, but so yeah, that's something like we worked on, like already thought on independently, and also Ari mentioned devotion shell, which is kind of cool because as Sodek said, devoted druid can tap for 2 mana effectively, and you can play turn 3 Nissa who shakes the world, which is a really good card to have.
yeah, really nice. Uh, Overall, I feel that if you want to pre-order like Luxor or card for this deck, don't do this because like I strongly believe this will be okay. Luxor is much closer to Lion Sash than to anything that will be extremely good in the format. Like it won't like this combo won't break the format. Like After all, this is a 2 mana for O2 creature that dies to anything. And like I'm not very high on like if you compare this possible red green saga slash mono green devotion deck with the druid combo involved, it's like not the on the same power level as the current top decks. Merktide, for color, Cascade decks, they should maybe Living End will have the biggest problems with it, but all these interactive decks will have very easy time with it. And
I think you are. I think you are dismissing the power of this deck. I think it's much. I think you're still looking at it as a combo deck. I
as
think
a
it's a
combo,
mid-range deck.
maybe a mid range part of it with will help a bit, and like this combo aspect of the deck will help in this like a bit lower tier decks, for example versus Amulet.
It's a
This can
mid-range
be
deck that has most, for the most part, it has one shitty dork in it. Okay, it has Devoted Druid, which is kind of shitty, and it has one Luxor. But it's a mid-range deck. You can play Ren and 6 with Saga, and you can play Ragavan, you can play Unholy Heat, you can play Fury, you can play Endurance, you can play Force of Vigor, you can play all those good cards. And you have 10 free 2 card combo in your deck. Because you go turn 1 Saga, turn 2 Druid, turn 3 Fetch Luxor, Equip, and you make infinite mana.
maybe we'll see who
Like,
is
it's
wrong
obviously
here.
not a Splinter Twin power
Yeah,
level deck, but it's much closer to Splinter Twin than it is to the old, like, Devoted Druid decks in terms of your deck is reasonable and you have an infinite combo, and not you are an infinite combo deck that has the backup plan of having I have 2 tireless trackers in my deck, and maybe it will draw me 3 cards, but my cards are all shitty because they are either tutors or shitty creatures. And here your backup plan is playing actually good cards like Karn and Ren and Saga and Ragavan. So I do think that you are dismissing this deck. I don't think it will be the best deck in the format by any means. I think it will be a competitive deck. I
okay.
think it will be something that will be heavily explored. And for those of you who love like green toolboxy decks, it won't be that. It will be a mid-range deck with a combo in it. We much more of a like red green Ponza style deck that we saw a couple of years ago than it will be to like a Berving pod deck or something like that. So
Yeah, that's true. So at least in next few weeks, the idea will be like checked heavily online, and like after a few challenge results, we'll see if it's really good or not. I would like to be wrong here because right now, like modern metagame is kinda okay. I don't want to say stale,
but it's getting
but
there. It's
yeah, it's slowly getting there. That like we know more or less what decks are clearly the best,
yeah. Like
and I would
for
like to see some shakeups. Yeah.
yeah, like we'll have those in Europe at least, those bigger paper tournaments in summer. So, for example, if I go to Copenhagen in August and I still see the same metagame, at this point I will definitely say it's stale. Like if
True.
in a couple of months
At
I
least
still see this.
there's a pioneer too. So
That's
like
true.
even a stale model won't be
Yeah. Okay.
the disaster.
That's enough about state of different formats and Luxor and Devoted Druid. Number 2 on our list is, in my opinion, by far the best card in the format, for the format rather, not in the format, not even close to that. Uh, Aside from Triumphs, which will be number 1, which is not really a spoiler at this point because you knew that they will be on the list, and so far we didn't have them. And it was really, really hard to justify any card in the set above Triumphs. So this card is Tainted Indulgence. It's a blue and black for an instant, so 2 mana. And it has draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless there are 5 or more different mana values among cards in your graveyard. So the ceiling of this card is a 2-mana instant speed divination, which is really, really good. And I don't think it's hard to see why 2-mana instant speed divination is really, really good, in my opinion.
It's kind of okay. It's a divination later in the game, so like if I expect this to be divination on turn 6, 7,
Yeah, that's
maybe.
why I said that the ceiling is really, really good. Like draw 2 for 2 is really good.
Yes.
So this is card that's similar to Expressive Iteration in terms of the longer the game goes, the more likely it is to be 2 cards for 2 mana. Expressive Iteration gets there much quicker, of course, but it's also much more, maybe not much more, but it's the variance on iteration is higher as well, because I will start all of my ramblings but by saying that this card isn't as good as iteration, so people don't get wrong idea. I think that this card can be contextually better than iteration in right deck, like if you are playing a draw go deck, or if you are not low enough curve to play iteration, or if you are not a red deck, for example. Just kind of problematic. If you don't have red mana in your deck, you can't really cast iteration. But yeah, like for example, iteration, like you play iteration on turn 4, and in many matchups, or even turn 5, you have 4 lands in play, you haven't made your land drop, you tap 2 mana to play iteration, and you are playing against like a cascade deck. If you don't get a land or a bubble in your top 3 cards and you are holding counterspell in your hand, you are kind of screwed, especially if you don't have another land in hand. So, like, iteration, like, if you are casting Tainted Indulgence with 5 different mana values in your graveyard, you get what you get. Like, you get 2 cards, always, no questions asked, which is really good. What sucks is that it will be, I think this this condition will be much harder than most people realize. Because, for example, if you have Delirium is only 4 types instead of 5 different values. Also, Mishra's Bubble and Fetchlands are both zeros. It's like the big part of Delirium are those 2. So it's basically, when I'm thinking about this card, it's a pretty great reanimator card, I think, because it's a discard outlet that's not card disadvantage, and it can help you. You already have many different mana values in Reanimator, because you have big creatures, you have like probably like Thoughtseize or Endings or Fatal Pushes, you have
Teferi, Solitude.
Yeah, you have some sort of pitch elementals that you can get for cheap in your graveyard. You have Fetchlands, so you will have a 0. You will have a big thing, you will have a medium thing with elementals, and you probably will have like some sort of like Thoughtseize or Push, and then a 2-drop. So it will be kind of easy to have 5 different mana values in your graveyard on turn, let's say 5 or whatever, or 4 even, especially if you mending. If you're mending on 2, you basically will have it most of the time. So yeah. This is also the type of card that in Reanimator will make your like pivot to being more controlish way more smooth, because you'll just start drawing cards. You have counterspell in your deck. You have the fairy. You'll just kill things, draw more cards, and ultimately you can even like hardcast your payoff or something and kill them this way for like a rest in peace or whatever.
Or just you won't be so far behind if you draw too many Fateful Mendings early if you need to play the control game, because there was, in my opinion, a big problem for the deck. Like overall, I think that SP Reanimator has too many problems to like cover it with just this one card.
You also have Trial in this set, which is I think important.
But that's the start at least, because now you can, like with 8 options to discard your Archon at opponent's end step, you have like much better position to play a draw go situation with the combo backup later on.
Yep.
And Archon of Cruelty, like I was thinking like when we are creating this list, I was thinking like if SP Reanimator is even good, like if reanimating Archon is good enough, because like there aren't any better reanimation spells left. There's Goryo's Vengeance, but like if you want to play Goryo's Vengeance into like returning Griselbrand, then you need to sacrifice the whole deck to support it nicely. So Persis is the only card, and if you have to play Persis, like Archon of Cruelty is probably your only really good target. But Archon of Cruelty is really good. It can outgrind even Living End if you don't have like 25 power, because you force me to sack one, then like any Solitude block, and
Also gives
suddenly
you free life and
yeah.
blocks anything but Waker of Waves.
Yeah, that's really scary. And that's only versus Living End. Versus Rhinos, like you force me to sack a Rhino, I can block another one, and one early Archon is good enough to
It's
stop the
really
game.
good against mid-range stuff in general.
Yeah, it's really good versus Merctide decks too, because and eventually like you can use your early removal to kill like DRCs and Ragavan, and then like if you force them to sacrifice a Merctide, that's close to game over by itself. Like even reanimator decks in Legacy are very high on Archon of Cruelty, just because it's really good versus Merctide and other Derver creatures.
I think one other important part of this card is that you don't need to play white, which is something that I don't know if it will happen, but you can play blue-black and have really good mana.
You
can play
think
Grixis.
that blue black is available or will be available? Like, okay, not having to play Solitude, Teferi was kind of good, but also kind of clunky with draw go situations,
Yeah. You can play
especially without
much.
Ragavan.
Yeah, you can play much more of a like Splinter Twinish approach to your deck. Like you are playing Drogo, you play discard, you play pushes, you play counterspell, you play Tainted Indulgence, you play Jace, those type of stuff, and then you have this combo finish of like you don't need to play Unmarked Grave in your deck. You just play like Indulgence. You have Snapcaster on Indulgence, so you have a bunch of discard outlets. You have Considers, and at some point you will just arc on them. You can also play the Grixis with blood things, like with Epicure and with Blood Type Harvester. You can go maybe this direction. You can play Grixis with Seasoned Pyromancer. So more of a like red, black, splash blue, and then you can play Iteration as well.
Seasoned Pyro.
So like there are
That sounds
definitely
cool.
like you have to play black in Reanimator, and that's the only color you have to play. So like having a multicolor cost card with black in cost is much less constricting than having like a white blue card like Mending, because
Yeah,
now you don't.
especially with the cycle of cards we have in the first place. And
Yeah,
wait,
one more thing I
okay.
wanted to add about Indulgence is also you don't need to make this kind of suspense because everybody knows it's Triumphs. And I do think it's also like a reasonable control card on its own. Like we are playing some Drogo kind of things. You don't really need to have anything great to discard even. Like 2-mana catalog is not terrible. Like it's a pretty decent card selection tools, especially with like in many decks that are control, you will either have something that you want to have in your graveyard for some kind of value, so like something with flashback, or you want to discard something that you will flashback later on to Snapcaster Mage, or you will discard your Snapcaster Mage to get back with Collagen's command when you don't have any other targets. Also, like you will have, like I can easily imagine like a blue-black deck that won't have that much trouble with filling your graveyard with 5 different types or 5 different values. You have 0 and 1 are given basically in control decks. You will have a fetch land and you will have like Thoughtseize or Push or Consider or whatever.
Or cantrips, yeah.
Yeah. 2 is pretty easy too because you have counter spells. Then it's starting to you have Archmage Charms on 3, and then you only need 1 more. So you want to have something like, I don't know, Shark Typhoon that can cycle and is a 6-drop. You can have Memory Deluge as a 4-drop. You can maybe look into playing some sort of pitch cards. Like Grief is not really good in control, but maybe there is something else you want to play. Maybe you want to splash. Maybe you want to play some sort of Unnerve deck with it. Like I can imagine one of my favorite cards that effectively got banned when Lurus was legal was Monastery Mentor. Maybe you can play some sort of like an Experimentor deck with Unnerve, and you can discard those. You have like you have Thoughtseize in your deck you want to discard later on often. You will have like Chip Curve, but you will have like you will have 0-1 like 0-1 to 3 once again. Those are 4 values already, and you will have 0-1 to 3 in most of those decks. And then you have once again to only find one other value that you will get at least semi-consistently into your graveyard. Yeah, I just think that Tainted Indulgence is a really powerful card, and do not sleep on it. If you like foil cards, buy your foils early, and they will be cheap. Okay, so it's already sort of spoiled to you because you probably had no idea that it's coming.
That wasn't me. That was Jędrek earlier on.
Multiple times. Sodek spoiled it multiple times. We have Triumphs.
Yeah.
And their names are Band Triumph, Jant Triumph, Esper Triumph, Naya Triumph, and Grixis Triumph. And
It's illegal to use other names.
Yeah.
Other like
you can call Band Triumph Spara Triumph.
Yeah, that's the only exception.
And only if you're Polish.
Why? Like let Szpada. Oh, that's actually Szpada. Okay.
So, as we said already, like it's very hard to justify any card in the set over Triumphs, just because of how impactful Triumphs already were during their first go, right? Like Triumphs changed a lot of things. I think they changed more than we wanted to give them credit for when the original Triumphs in Ikoria released. Like basically Triumphs made 4-color mana maybe not trivial, but much easier.
Yeah, that's true. Because now from 2 lands, like from 2 fetch lands, you have access to your 4-color, and you basically never have problems. If you go for turn 1 Triumph into turn 2 Shockland, then your mana is secured already.
Yeah, and if you have a color that you favor, you can play 4-color deck with like double. It's usually blue, like, right? Because you want to play a counterspell or charm. You can build a 4-color Archmage's Charm deck with Triumphs. Because your first 3 lands will be Triumph into Shockland, blue Shockland with a color you don't have, and into like basic island or whatever. And you have all the colors you can cast Charm, and it's like really good. Also, it does make 3-color mana kind of trivial. Like when I played various 3-color decks, if I had Triumph in my deck, it was just so easy to have it. Like it was just so easy to have all your colors.
You go turn 1 for your Triumph, and then also this like the addition of Triumph made Blood Moon effects much worse, because now if you go turn 1 Triumph into basics, you should still be good enough with your mana. That means that all these Blood Moon effects are much less impactful. Is it a good thing? Maybe, because now Magus of the Moon is the most played card, like because it can be Force of Vigor, whatever, but it's only played versus decks that are using lands in an unfair way. For example, Amulet or maybe Tron. And
in my opinion,
if you want to attack
that's
the mana
yeah.
on versus 4 color, that's not the best idea in my opinion.
Yeah, because of like abundant growth as well.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, that's the way it's meant to be. I don't like Blood Moon being good against 3-color decks that just want to cast their cards. I do like Blood Moon being good against like 5-color decks or decks that wants to use their land to gain any kind of like unfair advantage once against a Sodek set. So yeah, and also I think in the first go with Ikoria, I think the most important triumphs were blue. I think Rorin and Ketcha Triumph are by far the most played one.
Yeah.
And this time around, the most important ones will be red, actually. Because
Grixis.
because you want to play creativity decks that we already mentioned many times. You want them to be now you can actually play like a Grixis creativity deck with heavy commitment into each of those 3 colors while being able to cast turn for creativity. So I think that's a big, like basically creativity and Valakut decks. Like basically decks that care about having mountains. It was islands before, and coincidentally, both Rorin and Ketra Triumph that I already mentioned were also mountains. So yeah, I don't think that triumphs that I don't think that for example everybody is like, oh, Band Triumph, I can play Band Triumph in 4-color now, yada yada yada. I don't think it's that important. Like basically you want to, like we already said, if you go like if you have Triumph with a Shockland, it's already great. Like, and you can do it with any Triumph. But now you want to see which Triumph is best with a basic land instead. Like,
Or will with the setup 1 Triumph plus only basics. So I can for example see okay. If you want to play around Blood Moon, your Triumph should give you red because all your basics will be non-mountains.
yeah,
Yes.
and also I don't even think that every 4-color list plays mountains still. So like
I'm not
so Band
sure,
Triumph
sure
is the
about
worst one in those cases because you don't want to fetch
Yes.
Band Triumph and Mountain. I think that like out of 2 triumphs that will work, so Band and Naya, I think Naya is much more interesting one.
Yeah, because you can cast Vren and Teferi easier, but that's still a marginal in my opinion. It's not as important for color as Grixis Triumph is important for Grixis or Esper for Esper decks or just Triumphs with Mountains are for creativity decks. Generally speaking, right now mana is really good. Like it was really good earlier before these triumphs came out. Now they are here and mana is looking even better now. And um I don't think that like just the fact of having triumphs will drastically change the metagame share or something like this, but it will help you adapt with, for example, maybe if you are playing a Merktide control list, maybe there's a chance that with these new triumphs there will be a nice splash. For example, like you were playing Jeska, yeah? Did you
I didn't
play?
play Triumph in my deck.
You didn't play Triumph, okay.
I
So
think Merktide Control is like kind of the deck that is right on the edge of whether you want to have a Tapland in your deck, and I'd rather not have Tapland in my deck when I'm playing Merktide Control. But that basically, of course, the slower your deck is, the more interested you are in Taplands. So if you are playing any sort of control deck, you can now go smoothly. Like you can easily play Grixis with Archmage's Charm and both red and black commitment. Or you can play Esper with Archmage's Charm and both white and black commitment, which was something that was missing, in my opinion, from those decks. I don't think Triumphs will make them playable on their own, but maybe the combination of Triumph and Tainted Indulgence, so you have good mana and lesser reliance on Expressive Iteration to get card advantage. That might be something you want to look at. And
True.
I also think that I'd rather not have Triumphs at all. I'd rather wish that there were no Triumphs ever printed, but I'd much rather have 10 Triumphs than 5 Triumphs. I really dislike when land cycles are incomplete. Like,
that's super cringe.
Like, of course, like if you have a single land, it's okay. Like, for example, you had the future side friendly land cycles, but every land was different. So you had Growth of Burnwillows, you had Horizon Canopy, River of Tears, and stuff like that. Like, of course, those lands are like unique to those color combinations, and they kind of were reversed in what those combinations usually are. So, for example, red-green is traditionally a very aggressive combination, and red-green land gives your opponent life. Or Horizon Canopy is a green-white land that draws you cards. I guess green-white is kind of drawish these days, but I don't think green-white was drawing nearly as much cards like 15 years ago when Future Sight was printed. So, of course, like having blue-black Growth of Burnwillows or blue-white Growth of Burnwillows would be kind of insane. Like basically any blue Growth of Burnwillows would be basically like an underground sea that you can't fetch. Like literally close to zero cost for those lands. So but if you have already like half of the cycle, so either have friendly or enemy, and you don't have a whole cycle, it's really, really lame. That's one of my biggest beefs with Pioneer right now, that you don't have friendly, you don't have allied shock lands, pain lands, or you don't have allied fast lands, most importantly. And it's really annoying that those cycles are incomplete.
Yeah, like this forces you to build the mana in a very different way if you either have or don't have them. And this also affects the deck building. For example, if you don't have the fast lands, then you can't play, 2 or 3 color aggressive strategies, for example.
Yeah, it basically forces...
Winota can. Kinda can, because it has Innkeeper and mana dorks. But that's a real price you have to pay for this.
Winota basically has 12 pathways in it, which is like not ideal. Like you basically, if you are playing an aggressive strategy, you basically have to be enemy colored, I think, kinda. If you want to play 2 colors, so you want to play like red-white burn or like blue-red wizards, or once again, green decks kinda get around it with mana dorks, but still, In conclusion, incomplete land cycles suck, and we don't want to see them at all. So, WotC, please bring back Phyrexia, and please bring back allied fast lands, which I guess may happen. I was talking about with Canister about that, and he correctly pointed out that we already saw like 3 different Praetors and sets. Like we have Urabrask now, we had Jin-Gitaxias, and we had Vorinclex in Kaldheim. So we are only missing Sheoldred and Eleshnorn. So maybe after they just like sneak all those 5 Praetors in different sets, they will bring back Phyrexia. It's just something that we, or mostly Canister, speculated, like no sort of info or anything, that just, okay, maybe they will bring them back and we will have those sets in like, I don't know, maybe they are not even planned. Like I expect like, I don't know, 2 years or whatever.
So we'll see.
We'll see.
Okay. like
That's it.
we are already talking about Jingy taxes, so maybe that's the signal to end this
Yeah, it was
very
nice,
short top
quick,
10.
and it only it only took 2 hours because aside from those hour 50 UC Sodec, we also have 6.5 minutes before your internet went kaboom.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
yeah, so let's keep it under 2 hours. As always, thank you so much for watching our content. Any links that you need are down below. Our main form of content distribution is still Patreon. We would love for you to go down there and support us. We have some pretty big plans coming up. So we can use
This
your money.
big.
We can use your money
This
for
big.
for our
Growth.
expansion. Yeah, I was looking for the smart sounding E word, and it was expansion. Yeah.
Nice.
So check it out. If you don't want to pay us money, that's also okay. Anything from liking, subscribing, whatever, yada yada, all that jazz. There are also our Twitch and Twitter channels, our profiles down there. If you want to follow us, then so you get updates about stuff that we do. And yeah, we will maybe see you next week, maybe not. If we won't see you, if we won't see you next week, we will probably see you in 2 weeks for the May metagame update.
That's true. That's big.
I don't know. I don't know when
very
we.
big.
Yeah, I don't know when we will record it because in 2 weeks we have the 1st of May weekend, which is one of the biggest holidays in Poland, because that's when the anniversary of our constitution being signed on 3rd of May. So this is a national holiday in Poland, and 3rd of May is happening on Tuesday this year. So when we traditionally record, and I know I'm not doing anything in this long weekend. I don't know if Sodek will.
I am, sadly.
So there might be some delay on our May metagame video, but
it's also fair because we got the new new set coming on MTGO, so we also need to test.
So it's all planned. It's all planned. Disregard that.
Yeah.
Disregard that. The May metagame update will happen then in 3 weeks. So the 2nd week of May. We already will have 2 weeks of challenges at that point.
Yes.
So plenty of time for Luxor and Devoted Druid to shine. And for some other cards maybe to surprise us.
Who knows? Who knows?
Exactly. So thank you so much for watching. As always, we'll see you when we see you. Take care. Have a lovely second half of April. Bye-bye.
See ya.